Welcome to the Digital Enterprise Society podcast, addressing all aspects of the digital enterprise, inspiring connection without boundaries and creation without limits. Thank you for tuning in. Here are your hosts, Thom Singer and Craig Brown.
Well, hello, and welcome to, or welcome back to, the Digital Enterprise Society podcast. Thank you for coming along on this journey for this show that is designed to be a resource for those who work in and around PLM. The Digital Enterprise Society is a forum for the exchange of ideas surrounding the tools, processes, and practices used across the product lifecycle. To learn more, visit digitalenterprisesociety.org. My name is Thom Singer, and I have the honor to co-host this show, usually along with Craig Brown, who is an industry veteran and former PLM leader at General Motors. Although Craig's not with me today, Craig is off doing something very cool, but it's just me, and I am going to have a great conversation about the importance of mentorship. Because each week, we try to bring to this podcast very interesting and informative interviews and other ideas that will help all of the listeners enhance and grow their careers. And today's going to be fun because I've got here with me one of my friends. Marny Lifshen is a marketing communications consultant, an author, and a speaker who I have known for, 25 years. And full disclosure, we are actually the co-authors of a book called Some Assembly Required, A Networking Guide for Women that we wrote. I think we wrote that like 12 years ago. So Marny, welcome. Welcome to the Digital Enterprise Society podcast.
Thank you for having me, Thom. And it's especially exciting for me to be here today to talk with you about mentoring, because you have been such a crucial mentor for me as I have moved into and throughout my speaking career. I honestly don't know how I could have done it without you guiding me, without you being that resource that I go to and say, Thom, should I do this? Thom, how do I handle this? Thom, what do you think about that? It has made a huge difference and made me not only better able to take advantage of opportunities, but also to miss some of the common stumbles that you probably went through. But as my mentor, you steered me around.
Well, thank you. That's very kind. And it's a very good start to what we're going to talk about, because the truth is that's why mentoring is so important, right? Mentoring is really important because somebody has been down that path before. And the person who's gone down that path, they might have tripped over a rock or gotten hit in the head with a limb. But along the way, they can make little markers to tell the next person who's coming along. Or if there's a valley, they can build a bridge across. And I think it's really important, no matter what industry people are in, that they find mentors. And as they've gone down that path, that they turn it around and they serve as mentors. So that's what we're going to do today. But before we get started, I don't read people's bios when they come on the show. I usually like to let people give a little bit of their own background. So who is Marny Lifshen and how did you get here?
Well, I am, in general, considered a marketing communications consultant, author, and speaker, and that's pretty dry, pretty boring. A lot of people could say the same thing. What I feel like I do, the value that I bring, is working with companies and executives and entrepreneurs to help them learn how to leverage the power of personal brands and of networking. And mentoring, as we are going to talk about, is one of the really crucial parts of a solid, productive, and impactful network.
Oh, I agree. And so let's go into the little way back time machine. You and I are getting a little more seasoned in our career. But if we go back, if we go back 25, maybe, in my case, 30 years to where we began this journey, neither one of us did this alone. We all had people who came out of the woodwork. So let's talk a little bit about mentors that you experienced when you were a young professional and how that helped you.
Yeah, absolutely. I was lucky enough in my senior year of college to participate in a mentorship program. And I was matched, kind of the old-fashioned way. You filled out a form and you put the areas that you were interested in pursuing in your career going into your final year of college. And I was matched with an amazing woman named Barbara Vacker Cook. And she was a very successful lobbyist. So I literally learned the power of access and influence at the knees of somebody who does it all the time. That's basically her job, was being able to get in front of the right people on behalf of her clients. And she helped me find my first job out at college. She helped me transition from that first job into a new career opportunity. She helped me with everything from how to put together a professional looking wardrobe to how to handle clashes with coworkers and colleagues in the workplace. She helped me figure out which opportunities to pursue and which ones maybe not, kind of weren't the right fit. The thing that I think struck me so much in those initial years of my career with Barbara is I learned how to take constructive criticism, and I think that's one of the really crucial roles that mentors play. When people ask me, well, what is a good mentor? The first thing I say is they're not going to be your mother. They're not going to tell you you're perfect. They're not going to pat you on the head and say everything's going to be okay, honey. They're going to tell you sometimes some things that you don't want to hear. They're going to give you candid but honest feedback and direction. And I think that having someone like that early in your career really sets you up well to handle all the challenges that your career is going to throw at you.
So I never actually participated in like a formal mentoring program. And there's a really good place for those types of programs. In fact, we'll talk a little bit. The Digital Enterprise Society is just launching a mentor program that everybody who's listening, everybody who's listening really should get involved, whether they're the mentor or they're the mentee. But I sort of found early in my career, mentors sort of dropped in because I was open to it. I wasn't seeking it out per se, but I found that when you're newer in a career, if you're curious and if you're ambitious, sometimes people just sort of come along and maybe it's just for one coffee meeting, or maybe it's for 6 months or a year or several years where they're there to be your guide. I think all of us have had mentors and sometimes we didn't even know we had them. Do you agree?
Absolutely. I think most of the quote mentors in my life have been very organic in nature. And I think that those relationships, like all relationships, change. And depending on what challenge, what opportunity, what situation you're facing, you're not going to have a one-size-fit-all approach where, okay, here's the problem I'm having. I'm going to ask Paul. Now, a month and a half later, here's the problem I'm facing now. I'm going to ask Paul. Sometimes Paul's not the right person to go to. So you're right. I think sometimes people get hung up on a mentor as being very formal. We meet the second Tuesday of every month for 60 minutes, and I bring the list of things that I want advice on. And it doesn't always have to be that way. Sometimes organizations and companies create some infrastructure that can help facilitate. But honestly, Thom, I agree with you. I think a lot of times is the chemistry there? Do you trust this person? Do you feel like you can openly talk to them and be open to what they're telling you? And it may just be for one thing. I remember when I was trying to dip my toe into what was at the time a very scary world called social media, and I didn't really know how to utilize it for myself and for my business. Well, the first person I wanted to talk to is somebody who was practically born doing social media, right? Somebody who was 25 years younger than me, but very comfortable and very up to date in all the different tools. So absolutely, I agree with you. Mentors come in all shapes and sizes, and the most important thing is to be open to that opportunity.
Marny, you bring up a really interesting point, and that is we often think of mentor being the young woman and the young man going to the sage who gives them advice. But sometimes mentors can be younger, like in the case of you getting mentored on how to use the social media tools, or sometimes mentors can be peers or people who are maybe only, maybe half a step ahead of you on the career ladder, or maybe someone who's behind you on the career ladder but has figured out one little niche that is where you need your help. So you're right. They come in all shapes and sizes.
Definitely, definitely. And I'm a big fan of peer networking. I've participated in some formal organizations. I've started some when I went out on my own as a consultant in 2001. It was a strange time in the economy because the dot-com bust had just happened. And so a lot of marketing communications professionals that had great jobs in tech companies or with venture capital funds all of a sudden didn't have a job. And a lot of us ended up going out on our own as consultants. And we formed a group. And for the first 2 or 3 years of my business, that's who I went to for, hey, I think I need a virtual assistant. Has anybody used one before? Hey, I think I might need office space. Has anybody done that? Hey, I've got this client who wants me to do this project. I have no idea how much to charge. And it was absolutely critical to get feedback. I think that especially entrepreneurial-oriented people tend to think that they have to reinvent the wheel by themselves over and over and over again. And that just doesn't make sense when you've got such a rich community of potential mentors all around you.
Well, and it's interesting because many of the people who listen to this podcast are going to be people who are maybe not totally early, but somewhere along the earlier stages, maybe of their journey in their career. And a lot of them, when they hear someone say entrepreneurial, they think, oh, I don't have my own business. But really, you can be entrepreneurial working for a company. So I always look at it sort of the intrapreneur in a company as someone who is curious, wants to grow something, wants to do that, and you don't have to reinvent the wheel. You have so many people inside your organization, inside your industry, or sometimes mentors come from careers that are very different.
Yes, I personally love that, especially if you've got a situation you're dealing with inside of your company that's really complex and affects a lot of different people. Sometimes it's really good to get someone who's completely outside of that world and has a different perspective and isn't going to understand all the politics and the challenges internally. They can really give you some more clarity in viewing this situation that you're struggling with. So yeah, I think, as we said a moment ago, mentors come in all shapes and sizes, and they don't necessarily have to be exactly 5 years ahead of you or 10 years ahead of you or have the same degree that you do or have, work in the same type of role. Sometimes it's really helpful to have a wide variety. I do a lot, as you know, Thom, of presentations for women's organizations. And there are some things that working moms just need to talk to working moms about, even if it's the most supportive and understanding male colleague or mentor. They haven't been there. They're not a working mother. And so that's, I think it's just so situationally dependent in terms of which mentor do I go to for this.
And that's why I think the Digital Enterprise Society Mentor-Mentee Network is going to be so useful, because we talked about the fact that, yes, it's good maybe if you're trying to grow your career to know somebody who, has been down the path of PLM and these other digital tools. However, maybe someone inside your company isn't always the best choice, especially if maybe you're thinking of making a move. And so, that's why this program, I think, is going to be so beneficial for everyone who listens to this show. So, Marny, I wanted to ask you then, if somebody is thinking, I like this. I like what Thom and Marny are talking about. I'm ready for a mentor. How does someone prepare to be a good mentor once they've either found someone on their own or they've been matched through a program? How do you be a mentee?
Yeah, that's a great question. And I think that it's pretty common for people not to really know how to use a mentor, right? And so the biggest thing that I would suggest is be clear on what you need help with. If it really is just someone you admire, say within your company, within your department that is ahead of you, and you just want to understand like how they progressed in their career, great. As you said, that can be, can I take you for a cup of coffee? I just really love to learn how you've been so successful within XYZ company, right? So that can be it. But otherwise, and I'm approached, as I'm sure you are, often by people saying, hey, I'd really like to pick your brain, blah, blah, blah. And so we go and we have a cup of coffee or we have a call. And at the end of it, I'm like, I have no idea if I provided any value or not, because I'm not sure they knew what they wanted to get from me. It has to be more than just, how did you end up becoming a speaker, Marny, right? And so I think having that clarity of these are the challenges, the opportunities that I'm facing, these are the things I'm thinking about, I'm dealing with that I know I need guidance on. Having that clarity ahead of time with a mentor is really important, because then you're going to get the most bang for your buck in that lunch or coffee or beer after work, right? And then the other thing, and this is just a personal pet peeve, and I'd love to know your opinion on it, Thom. Nothing bothers me more than when I take time out of my schedule, which is pretty crazy, to help somebody, to talk them through a problem, to give them advice, to share my resources, to do an introduction, and then I never hear what happened. Did they follow up with that person? Did they join that organization? Did they use that approach with their boss? And I just don't ever know. And I just feel like that's kind of a common courtesy that people don't always think of, is after someone has helped you, let them know if it worked.
Well, let them know if it worked. Let them know if it didn't work. Thank them for the advice that they gave you. You're absolutely right. I've had many a conversation with people who'd like to buy me a cup of coffee. And the only thing that I know is that I got a free cup of coffee, because I don't know if they took the advice. I don't know if they didn't. And sometimes I've had people follow up and say, I really appreciated your advice. I decided to do it differently. That's awesome. That is as good. That's as good as I took your advice and I got the promotion. Is I thought through what you said and that's not right for me, but I appreciate your time. So that follow-up component, I think you're right on the money. If you're asking someone to help you, you've got to say thank you and you've got to let them know what happened. And then I have another piece of this, and that is, I think whether it's a formal program like the Digital Enterprise Society has, or whether you find someone at work, or maybe you meet someone in a coffee shop and they're in a totally different industry, but they take a liking to you and want to help you a little bit. the other thing is, in order to grow an ongoing mentor relationship, the mentee really has to drive that relationship early on. Once you build a real friendship and a real relationship, it kind of becomes give and take, kind of like dating. Somebody has to ask somebody out on the first few dates, and eventually it becomes sort of a give and take thing. But I have two people who I mentor, and I talk about them a lot on my other podcast, on Cool Things Entrepreneurs Do. I talk about them all the time because about 6 years ago, I met both of these gentlemen, and they were fresh out of college. They didn't know each other, but they've become friends over the years now. And they asked me, would I be their mentor? Well, I didn't work in both cases. I didn't work in their industry, and I didn't really know what it looked like to be a mentor. I'd had mentors, but I told them, I said, I don't know what that looks like, but call me whenever you want. And I have told several people that, and they never call again. And and Nick and Jake continued to call. And now 6 years later, my wife and my daughters call them my fake sons. And, and my wife invites them for Father's Day. I mean, we've developed a friendship that goes beyond me being their mentor. We're very good friends, even though we have this large age gap. And I am kind of like their fake dad. But their friends are always like, how did you get a mentor who's so invested in you? How did you get that type of relationship? Well, it took time. There had to be, sort of a win-win situation. But the other piece was early on, they drove it because I couldn't call them after I knew them for a month and go, hey, Jake, I haven't heard from you in a while. Can I mentor you today? That's kind of weird. So I think the mentee has to be the one who's thinking about, all right, we've agreed we're going to have a call every 2 or 3 or 4 weeks. You have to make the call.
Yeah. I think that's a really good point, and I agree wholeheartedly that the responsibility as the relationship grows should be on the mentee. And the other piece of that too is when I speak about networking and about mentoring as a part of networking, and people say, well, Marny, you say that a mentoring relationship has to be a two-way street, that both parties have to be producing something of value. But, I have nothing of value to offer to somebody. The story I like to tell is a young man who saw me speak somewhere and came up to me afterwards and said, I'm at this pivotal point in my career. I could really use some advice. Can I take you for a cup of coffee? And I just liked him. He had a good vibe. And so I was like, sure. And we went and we had a cup of coffee, and I gave him my advice, and he followed through with it and checked back in with me and said, Marny, it really helped. And, I knew the direction I wanted to go, but it made me feel so much more comfortable with it, with our discussion. Is there anything I can do to help you? And I kind of laughed and said, well, unless you feel like babysitting my daughters, who at the time were 4 and 6, I'll let you know. And he said, I'll babysit. I babysit my nieces all the time. And so literally this young man came and babysat my husband, and I got to go have dinner, which is a big deal when you have toddlers. So you never know how you can help your mentor.
Right.
I've had young women that I mentored for years that are now in positions within corporate America or organizations where they can hire me as a speaker. And I met them when they were in college or just out of college. And 10 years later now, they're like, Marny, can you be the keynote at our brand new women's initiative for my company?
Yeah.
Yes, I can.
You bet. And in fact, that's something that not only the two gentlemen who I I mentor, but some other people who I've mentored have done exactly that. They've gone and told their sales manager, or their HR people, hey, this person would be good for our annual meeting. That's huge.
Yeah.
Even if I don't get the business, that's a referral is huge for what I do. Yep. So there's all kinds of things. And if you're in a situation where your mentor, is in your company or in your industry, sometimes just talking them up at an industry conference and just saying, you know what, that guy is so helpful. He's so smart. That's just good vibes that you never know when it's going to trickle back around.
Exactly.
So I would like to switch gears here and look at the other side of this now. Why would somebody sign up to be a mentor? What do they get out of it? I mean, some of my friends are like, they look at the relationship I have with Nick and with Jake, and they look at the fact that I'm always willing to take a call or a coffee with somebody who wants to write a book or start a podcast. And they're like, it takes too much time. And I'm thinking, how many calls are you getting? Because I'm not getting that many. Yeah. But they're like, why would you do this? So why don't we talk about why would you be a mentor? Why would you go have coffee with that young guy after your speech?
Well, I think that first and foremost, as I said in the beginning, most of my big opportunities in my career have come through my mentors. I like to call them silver platter moments where I have, like from you, hey, Marny, have you ever thought about writing a book and becoming a speaker? Those have come through all of my different mentors, whether they're peer mentors or bosses. And so I just believe very much in pay it forward. Where would I be if I hadn't had people who are willing to take the time and energy and effort to help me? So I very much believe in that. But for me, it's also a networking strategy because, as you just said, you never know where it's going to go, and it could turn into a referral. They could be raving about me to their boss in the next staff meeting, and the boss is like, wait, now what does she do? So you never know where the opportunities come from. And it's just very second nature to me to have those kind of one-on-one interactions with people. As a speaker, and I know you feel this way too, Thom, I think there's some degree of limitation in how much impact we can have from the main stage. And so to me, if somebody actually takes the time and the chance to come up and talk to me afterwards and ask if we can have a call or go to lunch, I'm like you. I mean, it's not like that's 13 a week. So yeah, almost always I can find time. I think the more important thing is what happens after that one lunch or that one call or that one coffee is, does it turn into a sustained relationship? And like you, I would say it's probably less than half of the people that I offer to do a quote mentoring session with actually then stay in touch.
But I think when they do stay in touch, and if there is a good chemistry, I think you benefit so much because I learn a lot about the world and business from having these two friends who are 30 years old and being close enough with them that, I can ask them what, certain things mean in the vernacular of the millennial world. And it keeps me up to date for what I'm doing. But beyond that, we also benefit from having friends, and we benefit because all opportunities in life come from people. So it doesn't matter if that person has a higher job title than you or a lower job title, or if they're younger or if they're older. Connecting with people produces things that we can't even predict. But for the standpoint of somebody in an industry like this whole world of PLM, giving back to the next generation, I mean, in technology, things change so fast. I mean, for those of you who are listening, who are a little bit maybe more seasoned, like my regular co-host, Craig Brown, he's retired from General Motors, but he's doing a horrible job of retiring because he's consulting and he's mentoring people and he's hosting this podcast and he's speaking at conferences. And so I tease him, I go, you're the worst retired person I've ever seen. But he's at a point in his life where he wants to help people, and he gets really excited about these young up and coming people in his field because the tools and technologies have changed so much just in the last few years, and they're going to change more in the next 5 years. That keeping up, for him, as where he is, he has to be in touch with people to know what's going on, or it could all change around him. So I think he wins by being a mentor. He wins by doing the interviews here. So if you're somebody who's in a position to maybe be the one who gives back, I think that you need to get in touch with the Digital Enterprise Society and make sure that you're on the mentor side of that mentor-mentee network.
Absolutely. And as you said a moment ago, Thom, you don't have to be a certain age or have a certain amount of experience or a certain job title in order to, quote, qualify as a mentor. I mean, you can be 2 or 3 or 4 years into your career, but think about how much you've learned. And if you are hooked up with somebody who's in their first month in their career or at your workplace, think about how much you can share with them.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So Marny, before we sign off here, any last thoughts about mentors and mentees and people who are thinking, yeah, maybe I should jump over to Digital Enterprise Society, to their website and learn more about the program? And any thoughts?
Yeah, I just say take advantage of it because I don't think there's a lot of structured mentoring programs out there. I think it does tend to happen organically, which can be fantastic. But especially if our listeners are at a point where they're facing a challenge, they're dealing with an opportunity, they really know they need help and insight and experience in trying to pick their path forward, what a perfect opportunity to utilize the platform that you're working with, Thom, to gain access to somebody. Because I don't want people to be listening going, well, I can't think of any mentors in my world. And so, okay, well, you don't have to think of them. This organization will do it for you.
Well, and I think that everyone has something to learn and something to teach. So if you're still listening, as soon as you hit stop, you need to log on to the Digital Enterprise Society website. That's digitalenterprisesociety.org, and go over to the Mentor-Mentee Network section so that you can start networking a little bit and build your career. Now, you have to be a Digital Enterprise Society member to access the Mentor-Mentee Network. However, a promo code for free membership is available for a limited time. So visit digitalenterprisesociety.org and select the Career Center under the Resource tab, and you'll be able to learn more. Once you're logged in, you can create a profile and then select a mentor or mentee that might fit your area of interest or area of expertise. And I think you can search by location and keywords, and it's brand new, so it's going to grow and change. So get in on the early stages of this, because I think it's going to be great. So Marny, if somebody listened to this and they're like, who was this lady that Thom brought onto the show? I must know more about Marny Lifshen.
Yeah, I was going to say, you mean the brilliant lady that Thom brought on the show?
That brilliant woman that Thom was talking to. How do people find you?
They can find me through marnylifshencommunications.com, or you can just search for Marny Lifshen on LinkedIn and you'll find everything you want to know.
All right. Well, thank you so much for joining us. I really appreciate it. And to everybody who's listening, join us next week for more thoughts, ideas, and information in and around product lifecycle management. The Digital Enterprise Society is the place for the exchange of ideas around digital manufacturing tools. Check us out at digitalenterprisesociety.org.
You've been listening to the Digital Enterprise Society podcast. Learn more about what you've heard here today at digitalenterprisesociety.org. Join us again.